ImHotep.
We're both so close.
The Vizier and physician of King Zoser. All right, now we got that banner. Let's start our live on Instagram. All right, we're good to go now. Welcome to the MasterMind Library. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and your host of the MasterMind Library, the home of the MasterMind Book Club on FHTII.com. How's everybody doing? I hope well. I'm excited. We're in a new book. One of the people that I have a high reverence for, ImHotep. One of the fathers of medicine, if not the father of medicine. Obviously, we know in the Western world, Hippocrates as the Western father of medicine. But ImHotep predates Hippocrates by quite a few years. And right now what we have in front of us is a book that was written about him in the early 1900s. 1926, I believe, is when the book is published, right? But the book is about his life, right? So we're about to jump into it. Come here, Trey. Trey's gonna join us.
Yay.
All right.
Hi.
Yeah, say hi.
Hi.
Okay. Yep. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Wave hi. Okay. All right. You got all that out already? Oh, you do some punching. You gonna do some punching? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and get back to the reading. Okay. Let's get back to what the MasterMind Library. All right, that's enough punching. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough. Okay. All right. Let's get to the reading. Okay. So we are going to jump into the prologue and the intro. Okay. So let's get to that. And as y'all can see, here goes the cover. All right. 1926, Oxford Press. And the prologue starts here. We're going to make it a little bit larger. All right, Trey, that's enough.
Yeah. Today we're starting at the T.
Okay, we're going to make this a little bit larger for everybody, too. Right now it's kind of small, so let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, all right, Trey, calm down, okay? The prologue. This monograph is consecrated to the memory of a distinguished magician, physician, and sage who first appears on the stage of Egyptian history in the reign of King Zoser of the Third Dynasty, and reappears at intervals on that stage during a period of over 3,000 years. His record, therefore, extends over a large part of the history of ancient Egypt. We shall attempt to trace the fortunes of ImHotep both during the period of his human activity and during the subsequent periods when he was looked upon first as a demigod and finally as one of the full deities of Egypt. We shall also seek to analyze the forces which resulted in such an exceptional occurrence as the deification of an ordinary mortal, i.e., of one who had never been a king. The subject is one which will interest various groups of readers. In the first place, it will appeal to the lover of archaeology who is fascinated by the early story of our race and by every detail which throws light on its evolution. There is a glamour in the study of the earliest pages of civilization, wherever those pages have been written. There will be a further appeal to the growing number of cultured persons who are thrilled by the story of ancient Egypt as it is gradually being unraveled. The land of the pharaohs possesses a charm which can scarcely be rivaled by any other country and which steadily grows as its extraordinary history is better understood. Nowhere else do we meet with so ancient a civilization that can be reconstructed with an equal degree of certainty. Lastly, Our narrative makes its strongest appeal to the profession, which in every country of the world devotes its life to the relief of suffering and the cure of disease. Of unique interest to that profession must be the life of MHotep, one of the earliest of known physicians, who made so deep an impression on his fellow countrymen that his memory endured through many centuries until he was eventually raised to the rank of Egyptian god of medicine. A further object of these pages is to draw attention to the claims of Imhotep to be acknowledged as the patronal deity of medicine, claims which were acknowledged by the Egyptian physicians and which are incomparably older than those possessed by his semi-mythical rival Asclepios. The author makes no claim to original discovery. His task has been the more modest but yet useful one of gathering together numerous threads spun by others, of weaving them into a connected canvas on which he has drawn a portrait as true to life as is possible with the scanty details that have arrived. His research is based partly on the writings of leading Egyptologists, British and foreign, partly on the examination of Egyptian antiquities in various museums in this and other countries, and partly also on two visits to Egypt, which allowed the collection of first-hand evidence. The memories of happy days spent on the banks of the Nile have rendered this compilation a most enjoyable and interesting task. In historical studies dealing with such a subject as Egyptology, there is frequently, as in any other branch of knowledge in process of evolution, diversity of opinion even among experts. Further, what appears to be the truth today may be modified by fresh discoveries of temples, tombs, of papyri tomorrow. The wisest course, therefore, has seemed to him to include references on a liberal scale, so that the reader may be furnished with the authority on which statements are founded. An abstract of this monograph was contributed to the Fourth International Congress of the History of Medicine, which met last year in Geneva. Since, however, the short time allotted to individuals' contributions forbade the submission of more than a portion of the following study, it has been thought well to publish the work in extenso. My cordial thanks are due to various authorities who have given faculties in connection with illustrations. The director of the Musée des Antiquités Egyptiennes at Cairo has kindly permitted the reproduction of figs 1 and 5. The Ministry of Public Works in Egypt, the use of Colonel Lyon's photographs in Philae. The authorities of the Wellcome Historical Medical Museum have given facilities in regard to Figure 7. Those of the Staatsmuseum of Berlin in regard to Figure 6. Those of the British Museum in regard to Figures 10 and 11. The Illustrated London News in regard to Figure 2. Messrs. Methuen and Company in regard to Figure 7. In regard to Figure 12. The Egyptological Department of the Liverpool University in regard to Figure 17. To the late Dr. R. Catone, CBE, special thanks are due for the loan of blocks used in Figures 3, 4, 13, and 16. Various friends have also given generous assistance in connection with hieroglyphic readings and otherwise. Among them must be mentioned Sir E. A. Wallace Budge, Professor T. E. Peat, Miss Murray, Mr. C. J. S. Thompson, and Mr. W. R. Dawson. The latter has further been good enough to read through the proof sheets. I desire also to thank Dr. Allen H. Gardiner for his kindness in allowing the use of his new font for the hieroglyphs included in this volume. The story of MHotep adds a fresh chapter to the history of medicine, which is gradually being compiled, thanks to the collaboration of workers all the world over. JBH Westfield Reading. All right, so let's go on down to the introduction, and we're gonna dive into that. All right. Hey, you want to look at the book? All right, here you go. All right, there it is right there. All right, listen to me read to that right there, okay? In the childhood of the world, Egypt was the pioneer country as regards the evolution of medicine. To her belongs the high honor of having raised the healing art to a level far exceeding that hitherto attained, both in diagnosis and in therapeutics. Astonishing progress was made. Even pathology attracted widespread interest. The Edwin Smith Papyrus suggests that dissection of the human body was systematically practiced in ancient times. The medical schools of Egypt, closely associated with her priestcraft and temples, were famous far and wide. Her specialists, physicians, being summoned to attend royal and other personages in distant lands. For a physician to have been educated in Egypt was in itself a passport to success. This high reputation is acknowledged by Homer when he says, "In Egypt, the men are more skilled in medicine than any of humankind." Most of the ancient races of the world have found a place in their theology for one or more deities of medicine to whom were attributed miraculous powers in restoring sick and apparently dying persons to health. Such deities were worshipped amongst the Persians, Hindus, Chinese, Babylonians, Aztecs, and Phoenicians inter alios. Many of them had shrines which were resorted to by suffering men and women, whether afflicted mentally or physically. The ancient Egyptians also had numerous deities to whom were attributed the inventions of various arts and sciences, including medicine. Amongst those most generally referred to in this connection are the falcon-headed sun god Ra, the wonder-working Isis with her son, the sun god Horus, Ptah, the ancient god of Memphis, and the ibis-headed moon god Thoth, or Thoth, the reputed author of religious and scientific works, including treatises of medicine. Less important medical members of the Egyptian pantheon were Khnum, with ram's horns, and the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, who were worshipped as the tutelary deities of procreation and childbirth. All these deities, however, were probably mere mythical creations of the imagination and lacked the fascination associated with a human personality. 1. Ptah was the deity of healing in Memphis, just as each local deity was the creator and healer of his own people. Khnum was thus the healer at Aswan, and Sekhmet preceded Ptah, and consequently Imhotep at Memphis. 2. Other deities were closely associated with childbirth. C.F. Maspero, Popular Stories of Ancient Egypt, 1915, page 36. Of outstanding interest, therefore, is the famous Imhotep, who first appears on the stage of history as the Vizier, physician of King Zoser, and who so impressed his fellow countrymen with his skill in healing disease that he was eventually raised first to the status of medical demigod and eventually to that of full deity of medicine. Unfortunately, we cannot trace his history from the beginning. All that can be done is to collect and arrange such biographical details as have survived. Happily, recent research allows of a more coherent account than was formerly possible. Imhotep, the earliest physician of whom historical details have survived, lived in the reign of a famous Egyptian king named Zoser, a pharaoh of the third dynasty, ca. 2980 to 2900 BC. Unhappily, we know nothing of his early history. No glimpse is allowed us of his birthplace or childhood. There is no record of his appearance. 1. According to Manetho, King Athothis of the first dynasty practiced medicine and wrote anatomical books. No biographical details, however, have survived, and the entire story may be legendary. Figure 2 represents the life-size statue of King Zoser, recently found at Saqqara, and inscribed with his name as King of Upper and Lower Egypt. The figure wears the sacred wig covered with the Nemes headdress. The chronology adopted in this work is that of Professor Breasted's History of Egypt. All right, so let's see where we stopped at. There is no record of his appearance in the flesh, nor is anything told us of the steps by which he reached the highest post open to an official in Egypt. Descended from a distinguished architect named Kenofer, and from a mother named Credonc. ImHotep appears to have received a liberal education, so far as such was possible in those far-off days. At any rate, he grew up an erudite, versatile man, a sort of Aristotelian genius who took all knowledge for his province. He was distinguished for his vast learning as well as for some striking achievements, and in the course of ages became generally recognized as the Egyptian god of medicine. His name, ImHotep, signifies he who cometh in peace, a most appropriate name for a healer of the sick, and one which must have brought solace and courage to many an anxious patient. It will be convenient to divide his career into 3 periods and to consider in order. 1. ImHotep as contemporary of King Zoser, ca. 2980 BC. 2. ImHotep as a medical demigod, ca. 2850 BC, through the reign of Mycerinus, or Mycerinus. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. 3. ImHotep as full deity of medicine, ca. 525 BC through the Persian period. 1. For the construction and meaning of the name, cf. Appendix B. And here goes that figure with the headdress, the Nemes headdress, King Zoser. For anybody who'd like to see that, there he is right there. And that concludes chapter 1. So on our next episode, we'll be diving into chapter 2, ImHotep as the contemporary of King Zoser. This material is super important to me. ImHotep is one of my ancestors and known as one of the most brilliant healers or doctors, physicians of all time. And peep where the book was. The book was in the London School of Medicine for Women. This is where I got the PDF version from. There are many books in a lot of different libraries. So let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. There are many books in a lot of different libraries. Like I have some books that I got from the Department of Defense Library. I've gotten books from the London School of Medicine for Women Library. I've gotten books from the Yale Library. I've gotten, matter of fact, I've gotten ancient maps from the Princeton Library. And most of these libraries are fully available online. So I highly recommend y'all dive into those. And it's some powerful material that is out here for us to dive into, but we've got to dive into it. We've got to go and grab those materials, and we've got to take the time to read them. And this is why we do it. He's asleep right now, right? He's snoring right now, right? But he was listening. At 2 years old, he's learning about ImHotep. He's learning about one of his ancient ancestors who is known as the god of medicine in ancient Kemet and known as the god of medicine in Egypt today, known as the god of medicine in many nations. And he's getting a chance to hear his father read this to him. My son Huey is sitting right here. Sincere is sitting right here. They're listening to me read these books to them. Well, I am encouraging every father out there to read to your children. I'm telling you right now, there is a special bond that you create with your children when you read to them. And you can read anything to them, but I recommend that you read some things to them that's going to help them go to the next level of whatever it is that they desire to go to the next level of in their life. And one of the ways to help them figure that out is to get their natal chart. That's mine. That's my natal chart right there. And each of my children, they have their natal charts as well. And then helping them to learn how to read that. And then what happens is these books that I'm reading to them, there's certain things that start to stick out to them because they are listening and because they're seeing the way that was laid before them by ImHotep, by Queen Afua, by Maxwell Maltz, by Napoleon Hill, by Noble Drew Ali, by Yeshua, by Solomon, by Marcus Aurelius. All of these authors are necessary for my children to learn. And who better for them to learn it from than their father or their mother? So I recommend and I encourage every father out there, mothers too, if you're listening, read to your children. Read them something. It would be better to read them things that's going to benefit them in life. But even if you got goosebumps and you got whatever books, read it to them. You know, the next book after we complete MHotep, the Vizier and Physician of King Zoser, is The Never Ending Story. So if you got some children and you want them to hear somebody read, I'm going to read The Never Ending Story. That's the very next book. I highly recommend you guys put the speakers in front of some children and let them hear this book. Many children have seen the movie. Not many have read the book or listened to anyone read the book. Their imagination will receive that information differently when the book is read to them aloud. Almost like their snap time. You're reading a book to your children. Bedtime, reading a book. It doesn't have to necessarily be bedtime, but it could be bedtime. The point is, if you feel the conviction to do so, read to your children. They're going to win because of hearing these messages from you. And it reduces their tablet time. You reading to them reduces their TV time. Most of the time after I read to my children, I say, hey, go outside. We're reducing that TV time. We're reducing that tablet time. We're reducing that inside time. If you inside, we learning. And then you get a little bit of time for entertainment. But most of your time outside. Or if it's inside, we learning something. We learning the material in these books. We learn in astrology. We learn in numerology. We learn in comparative religion. We learn in information about the Constitution. We're learning information about geography, geology, astronomy, and the list goes on. Because they're going to need all of this one day. I am encouraging every parent out there to read to their children and talk to your children because they are going to need this. Y'all see them videos of these robots on social media? Them robots don't need no break. They don't smoke cigarettes. Them robots don't need to use the bathroom. Them robots will work, and they don't need to take a break to talk to anybody. They don't get tired. Their battery runs out. Or the power in the building goes out or something like that. But other than that, them robots work 20 some hours a day before they need to be recharged again or whatever the situation is for them. Well, we've got to come into the understanding that that's what we're sending. This is the world that we're sending our children out into. They need this knowledge about ImHotep. They need this knowledge from Queen Afua on being a sacred woman. They need the knowledge from Maxwell Maltz and psychocybernetics on how to free the mind of symbols. They need the information that Sun Tzu gives in The Art of War. They need the leadership information that John C. Maxwell puts in all his books. All of these different pieces of information are extremely important for the way forward for our children. And if we want to put that goat's blood over our door, so that when Pharaoh's curse comes down the line, and make no mistake about it, Pharaoh's curse is down the line already. It's already been here. It's been here for a long time. If you want to make sure that you are passed over, you got to put that goat's blood over the door, according to the story of Moses, right? Well, what is the goat's blood in today's world? Well, it's applied knowledge. So reading with the children is, I would say, one of the first steps. But then whatever is said to do in those chapters thereafter, we must apply. We must practice. We must synthesize into our being, into our way of life. And as a result, this becomes the goat's blood that's over the door, while Pharaoh's curse is coming down the pipeline to take out all of the wicked. Applied knowledge. This is the key. And in the midst of that, I'm going to leave y'all with this. And so I was telling one of my homeboys just an hour or two ago what the keys are to rise in spirituality. If you want to rise in your spiritual life, the keys to rise are maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice. If you live those at the spirit, mental, and physical levels of your being, you will rise in spiritual ability. The reveals that you will receive will be next level. And nobody else will understand. They'll be looking at you when you explain it like, what? What is he talking about?
Daddy, are you done reading?
I'm done reading, but I'm talking right now. You see, we still live right now. Did you want to say hi to everybody?
Mm-mm.
You want to tell them how much you love coming to the MasterMind Library, listening to me read? My daughter's 5 years old, and she is learning some things that I didn't learn until I might have turned 35 years old. Well, it's still beneficial at this age, but what if the seed would have been planted at 5? What if the seed would have been planted at the moment of conception, while my baby was still in the womb and I was reading to her while she was in the womb? What if we give our children these seeds really early, where the seed that I got might not have been until I was 33? There's certain things I didn't learn about holistic health or about reading until I was in my mid-30s. Well, if I give my children these things at birth, at 5 years old, at 8 years old, well, they're not going to understand it very well early on. Maybe some of them do, but maybe the most of them, they don't. And that's okay, because what it is a seed that's being planted. It's a seed. That seed is important. To plant that seed as early as possible, and then you keep watering it. You give it some fertilizer. Well, what's the fertilizer? Love, compassion, empathy, consistency, intensity, tenacity. Consistency being one of the main ones. But you also give it those 5: maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice. Doing those 5 at the spiritual, mental, and physical levels puts you in a position to completely alter your existence along the lines of where you actually want to go, or maybe along the lines of where you are supposed to be. I'm telling y'all right now, read to your children. I'm looking forward to reading this book to them. The Vizier and Physician of King Zoser. ImHotep. This is powerful. Super powerful. All right. Hey, listen. Expose your gift.